Audrey's 18th birthday had been whispered about for weeks in her household, but not with the warmth one might expect. In the cold, sleek penthouse where she lived with her stepmother Patricia and stepsister Jessica, birthdays were not celebrations, they were calculations. Patricia, with her perfect smile and polished composure, had always treated Audrey like an afterthought, a blemish in her carefully curated life. Jessica, the golden girl, floated through the halls in silk and perfume, oblivious to Audrey's existence except when she wanted a scornful laugh at her expense. That morning, Audrey woke in the modest room Patricia allowed her, a room far smaller than Jessica's gilded suite. The velvet dress laid out on her bed shimmered in crimson, too expensive for someone Patricia openly referred to as useless. "Don't slouch, Audrey," Patricia's voice cut through the room, cold and precise. "You need to look presentable tonight." Audrey's heart thudded. She had expected neglect, maybe a lecture, but this formal tone hinted at something far worse. "Why the attention now?" she asked, trying to hide her unease. Patricia only smiled, sharp, predatory. "Times change, debts come due, and some sacrifices must be made," she said. Her fingers grazed Audrey's collarbone, smoothing the bodice of the dress in a touch that felt more like ownership than care. "Better you than Jessica," Patricia whispered, and Audrey's blood ran cold. Before she could ask what she meant, a low rumble echoed through the penthouse. Heavy doors downstairs slammed open with a sound that vibrated through the marble floors. "He's here," Patricia murmured, eyes flicking toward the foyer with a mixture of fear and relief. Her grip on Audrey's wrist tightened. "You go downstairs. Do not speak unless spoken to. Sign where the man in the gray suit instructs. Understand?" Audrey wanted to protest, to demand answers, but she sensed that any hesitation could cost her far more than dignity. The car ride was long and silent. Rain lashed against the windows, turning the city streets into a blur of light and shadow. Audrey tried to recall what she knew of the man she was being handed over to, Sebastian Blackwood, the crippled Vampire King. The rumors were terrifying. They said he had been horribly injured in a war between vampire clans, left to rot in a motorized wheelchair, hiding his scarred face behind a mask. Stories told of his cruelty, his merciless nature, and the brides who disappeared under his roof. But as the city lights of Seattle faded behind them, replaced by the looming forests of the Olympic Peninsula, Audrey realized she had no choice. The manor loomed like a fortress, concrete and Gothic stone over a rushing river. Guards flanked the massive iron gates, their eyes cold, unyielding. Audrey's heels clicked nervously against the marble floors of the grand foyer as she was led to a room on the third floor. The Red Room, Martha called it, a suite of four-poster beds, a roaring fireplace and stormy views of the ocean cliffs. But its luxury did nothing to soothe her nerves. Outside, the forest was alive with shadows, and she knew the world she had entered was not welcoming to the faint-hearted. Dinner was set for two at a table long enough to seat 50. Audrey's gaze was drawn immediately to the figure in the wheelchair at the head of the table. A heavy, mechanical voice rasped from beneath the mask. "Come closer," it commanded. Hesitant, Audrey approached, drawn by some unexplainable force. As she drew near, she expected the smell of antiseptic or decay, but instead, the air carried the scent of rain, pine and sandalwood, intoxicating and pure. The voice continued, sharp and deliberate. "You bought me. I collected a debt. There is a difference." Audrey swallowed hard. The stories were wrong. His voice, even through the synthesized rasp, carried power, control, and something undeniably human beneath the mask. "Your stepmother lied," he continued, studying her with an intensity that made her chest tighten. "She says you are obedient, but you are fire." A shiver ran down her spine, not from fear, not entirely, but from the undeniable truth in his words. She had always been underestimated, dismissed, and now, in the presence of the most feared being in the vampire world, her smallest acts of courage and integrity were being recognized. Later that night, sleep eluded her. She found herself wandering the manor in silence, drawn to the vast two-story library. Moonlight cut through the windows, illuminating the dust in the air like tiny stars. Her fingers brushed across the spines of countless books until a familiar ledger caught her attention. The Sterling family ledger, her father's meticulous handwriting. Inside, hollowed pages held a small silver locket, her mother's. Patricia had claimed it lost in a fire years ago. The realization of her stepmother's betrayal burned hotter than the storm outside. A shadow moved across the balcony. The wheelchair, the mask, the crutches, gone. There he stood, alive, whole, and breathtaking, descending with the grace of a predator. "You," he said, voice smooth as velvet, just uncovered the biggest secret in the enclave. The air between them thrummed with unspoken tension. In that moment, Audrey realized she had entered a world far more dangerous than she had imagined, but one that might also recognize the strength she had hidden for so long. The next morning the manor was eerily silent. Rain still streaked the tall windows, and the wind whispered through the ancient pines surrounding the estate. Audrey awoke on the red velvet chaise, clutching the silver locket her mother had left behind. Her heart raced, not just from fear, but from the realization that the world she had entered was far more complex than she had ever imagined. Sebastian Blackwood, the crippled Vampire King, wasn't just powerful, he was a master of deception. The wheelchair, the mask, the supposed scars, none of it was real. He had created the illusion of weakness to manipulate his enemies, and now she understood that she was playing a dangerous game in a palace full of secrets. Her first encounter with him that morning was abrupt. The door to her suite opened silently and Martha, the weary human maid, motioned for her to follow. "He wishes to see you," Martha whispered. Audrey's stomach churned with a mixture of dread and curiosity. She followed the narrow corridor until she entered a vast hall dominated by a spiral staircase that seemed to touch the ceiling. At its base, Sebastian awaited. He wasn't masked today, his storm-gray eyes pierced her very soul. He gestured toward a high-backed chair opposite him. "Sit," he commanded. Audrey obeyed, her pulse quickening. Sebastian studied her intently, his expression unreadable. "You discovered the locket," he said finally, his voice low, almost reverent. "Tell me what you know about it." Audrey recounted what she had learned. Her father had left the silver locket, hollowed, containing an engraving of a bat and a wolf circling each other. A symbol she didn't recognize but instinctively felt drawn to. Sebastian leaned forward, fingers steepled. "That symbol marks the sunken vault," he explained. "A repository of artifacts from the oldest vampire clans, a treasure your stepmother and her allies have been searching for decades. You have stumbled into something far larger than yourself, Audrey." Fear tried to root her to the spot, but she felt a strange surge of determination. She had been underestimated all her life, dismissed as weak, overlooked, helpless. But here, in the presence of a man who could destroy entire families with a thought, her courage mattered. I don't know where it is," she admitted, "but if it's important to you, I want to help." Sebastian's eyes softened, just for a fraction of a second. That single moment of recognition, of trust, was more dangerous than any trap she could face. Over the next hours, he revealed pieces of the vampire world she had only glimpsed in whispered legends. The Enclave, he explained, was a hidden society of vampire elites controlling everything from finance to shadow politics. His rivals plotted in silence, expecting him to be weak, crippled, and broken. "They underestimate me," Sebastian said, his voice sharp, cold, yet undeniably magnetic. "And now they will underestimate you as well. You appear fragile, human, but you have fire. That fire saved you today." Audrey felt her cheeks flush. She had never seen anyone speak of her like that, not her teachers, not her stepmother, not even friends. To have the most feared vampire in existence acknowledge her courage, it was intoxicating, terrifying, and exhilarating all at once. But the lessons came with danger. Late that night, as Audrey explored the manor's labyrinthine halls, she encountered one of Sebastian's most loyal lieutenants, Lord Kale, a vampire whose loyalty to Sebastian was rivaled only by his cruelty to intruders. Kale's shadow fell across her path. "The girl is far too curious," he hissed, his pale fangs catching the moonlight. Audrey's instinct screamed for her to flee, but the memory of Sebastian's words steadied her. Calmly, she spoke the ancient words of protection she had learned from her mother's journals, an old dialect no human in the manor could comprehend. The air shimmered around her and Kale recoiled, eyes wide in shock. In that moment she realized she possessed a power that few could touch, a gift that might just save her life. Sebastian found her moments later, leaning against the balcony railing, watching the storm-tossed sea below. "I see you've discovered your first strength," he said softly. "Do you understand what this means?" Audrey shook her head. "It means," he continued, voice low, reverent, "that you are not just a pawn. You are my equal in ways that the Enclave cannot comprehend. You have the potential to be more than my bride, Audrey, more than my partner. You may be destined to change the balance of power itself." Her heart skipped. The enormity of his words struck her, but so did the undercurrent of danger. Every shadow in this manor was watching, every whispered secret had teeth. Her stepmother's betrayal, her father's hidden legacy, Sebastian's enemies, all collided in a storm of uncertainty. Yet for the first time in her life, Audrey felt seen. Not as weak. Not as disposable. Not as the stepdaughter meant to suffer in silence. She felt powerful, capable, and perhaps most dangerously desired, not through fear but through respect. The night deepened, and with it came the inevitable challenge. A message arrived, sealed, stamped with blood and darkness, summoning Sebastian to a clandestine council of the vampire elite. He handed Audrey the locket, now glowing faintly with the same symbol of the bat and wolf. "Keep this close," he said. "You are more valuable than they will ever understand. Do not let them touch it. And do not let them touch you." His words, though protective, carried a promise. A warning that the world she had entered was filled with darkness far beyond mortal comprehension. As Sebastian departed, leaving her alone in the library, Audrey traced her fingers over the silver locket. She was terrified. She was unprepared. Yet for the first time she understood that fear was no longer a cage. It was a signal, a spark to ignite courage she never knew she had. And she knew that when Sebastian returned, the games of power, loyalty, and desire would test her limits in ways she could never imagine. The manor was quiet, but the tension was electric. Audrey spent the day preparing for her first public appearance with Sebastian. A winter solstice ball held at neutral grounds, where vampire clans gathered to display power and wealth. For Audrey, it was a nightmare dressed in silk. She had to play the part of the timid, obedient human bride, yet every glance, every whispered remark in the crowd carried the threat of exposure. Her crimson gown, chosen by Sebastian himself, hugged her form in dangerous perfection. Black silk shimmered like oil under the candlelight, and a diamond choker gleamed against her pale neck. She felt like prey, but prey with fire. Sebastian arrived in his motorized chair, the mask back in place, his presence commanding absolute attention. Hundreds of eyes followed him, curious, wary, and predatory. He moved with a deliberate slowness, manipulating the fear and respect of the other elites, but Audrey could feel the power radiating from him even beneath the mechanical facade. As they entered the ballroom, whispers flitted like shadows. "The crippled king brings a human bride," one noble murmured. "She'll be gone in a week." Audrey's heart pounded, not just from fear but anticipation. Sebastian's hand rested lightly on her shoulder, a subtle, protective gesture that made the air between them almost unbearable. Lord Kale, one of Sebastian's most dangerous rivals, stepped forward, his pale blonde hair gleaming in the crystal light. He laughed softly, an edge of cruelty in his tone. "I thought we might see a ghost today," he sneered. "But it seems the crippled king has brought bait." His gaze swept over Audrey, assessing, appraising, dismissing her humanity. But Sebastian's mechanical voice cut through the ballroom like steel. "She is adequate," he said. The word was flat, neutral, but Audrey felt the hidden weight of the compliment. It meant he trusted her. The night continued with an air of polished menace. Guests whispered, alliances formed and broke in seconds, and Audrey learned quickly that appearances were weapons. She realized the mask Sebastian wore, the chair he used, the rumors of his broken body, they were all tools of power. And she, the underestimated human, had become an unexpected piece in a dangerous game. When Kale moved to brush her arm, a challenge, a test, Audrey instinctively recoiled and muttered the ancient words of protection she had learned. Kale's eyes widened in shock, a flicker of fear in his otherwise cold gaze. He backed away, muttering curses under his breath. Audrey's small act of defiance drew a glance from Sebastian, hidden behind his mask, that she could feel like heat on her skin. Later, in a quiet corridor behind the ballroom, Sebastian's mask was removed, and his true face revealed for the first time in public. His storm-gray eyes locked onto hers, and she saw the vulnerability hidden beneath centuries of power. "You are far braver than anyone would expect," he said softly, "and far more dangerous than you know." Audrey swallowed hard. The words, gentle yet charged, ignited something deep within her. She realized she was not just surviving this world, she was beginning to belong to it. But belonging carried a price. Every secret she uncovered, every whispered warning, deepened the shadows that surrounded her. As the night reached its zenith, a sudden attack shattered the illusion of safety. A rival clan attempted an ambush in the Grand Hall, aiming to seize the Blackwood heir's most prized artifact. Chaos erupted, crystals shattered, candles toppled, and screams filled the air. Audrey froze, unsure whether to hide or act, until she felt Sebastian's hand at her waist, guiding, steadying. "Now, Audrey," he commanded. Trusting him completely, she moved forward, her fingers brushing the locket that held her mother's secret. Whispering the ancient protective words, she unleashed a force that sent the attackers recoiling in fear and confusion. The ballroom fell silent, all eyes on the young human who had just turned the tide of a potentially deadly confrontation. Sebastian approached her after the chaos, his face inches from hers, eyes intense. "You are extraordinary," he said, his voice raw and unfiltered. "You've seen power at its darkest and yet you did not falter. That is rare." Audrey felt a flush of pride, fear and something else, something dangerous stirring in her chest. Her pulse quickened not from the danger but from him. In that moment the slow burn between them became undeniable. Their hands brushed, accidental yet electric, and for a heartbeat, the world narrowed to just the two of them. By the time the night ended, Audrey had learned more about herself than she had in 18 years. She was no longer the weak, overlooked stepdaughter. She had courage, power, and an unexpected influence in a world that feared and revered Sebastian Blackwood. Yet the game was far from over. Secrets of the sunken vault, her stepmother's betrayal, and the dangerous politics of the vampire elite loomed on the horizon, threatening to engulf her at any moment. The morning after the solstice ball dawned over the Blackwood manor with a muted, gray light that seeped through the towering windows. Audrey woke with her heart still racing, her mind replaying the night's chaos, the whispers of the guests, the sudden ambush, and the feeling of raw power that had surged through her when she had spoken the ancient protective words. She had saved not only herself but also those under Sebastian's protection, and the thought both exhilarated and terrified her. For the first time, she realized the world she had stepped into was not a place for the timid. It was a world that demanded courage, cunning, and strength, and she was no longer the weak girl her stepmother had underestimated. Sebastian was waiting for her in the training hall, a vast chamber hidden beneath the manor. The air was cool, scented faintly of pine and iron, and the walls were lined with weapons that gleamed under the dim light. The king's mask was gone, his storm-gray eyes sharp, calculating, yet softened just slightly when they met hers. "You performed admirably last night," he said, voice low and steady. "But courage alone will not keep you alive. You need control, discipline, and a deeper understanding of your power." Audrey's stomach tightened. She had thought she had only glimpsed the edge of her abilities, but now she realized that her potential was much greater than she had imagined. Over the next days, Sebastian trained her relentlessly. They began with the basics: movement, awareness, and the subtleties of sensing supernatural energy in others. Audrey was clumsy at first, but every mistake was met not with harshness, but with guidance. Sebastian's hands, cold yet strong, would adjust her stance, correct her posture, or guide her through a defensive maneuver. The closeness was electric. Each touch, each shared glance, carried a tension neither of them could entirely mask. For Audrey, the intensity was overwhelming. He was dangerous, powerful, terrifyingly alive, and yet, under that veneer of predator, there was a man who believed in her in a way no one ever had. One evening, as the sky darkened over the cliffs, Audrey practiced speaking the ancient words that had saved the ballroom guests. The power coursed through her, a tangible force that seemed to hum beneath her skin. Sebastian observed silently, standing just behind her. "You're learning quickly," he said, his voice softer than usual, almost intimate. "But power without control can be destructive. You must learn restraint, patience, and focus." His words were instruction, yet they also carried an unspoken current, an acknowledgement of her courage, her intelligence, and her growing presence in his world. Audrey's training was interrupted one afternoon when a message arrived. Patricia, her stepmother, had discovered part of her father's secret ledger and was attempting to sell information to a rival vampire lord. Sebastian's expression darkened, his usual calm replaced by a predator's intensity. "They think they can play me?" he murmured. "They are fools." Audrey felt her stomach tighten. The danger that had lurked at the edge of her life was now crashing forward with full force. But this time she did not feel powerless. "We can stop them," she said firmly. Sebastian studied her, his eyes narrowing slightly, and for the first time, Audrey sensed a hint of pride hidden beneath his cold exterior. "Yes," he said finally. "Together." That night, under the veil of darkness, Audrey and Sebastian confronted Patricia and her accomplices in a shadowed alley near the edge of the city. The confrontation was tense, the air thick with threats, whispered curses, and unspoken danger. Patricia's smug confidence faltered when Audrey, unafraid, recited the ancient words that activated a protective shield around them. Sebastian moved with lethal precision, a blur of motion and power, his presence enough to subdue even the most hardened of enemies. Patricia's plan collapsed in moments, her betrayal exposed, her influence stripped away, leaving her trembling in fear before the very girl she had once sought to discard. Afterward, as they returned to the manor, The storm of adrenaline and danger lingered in Audrey's veins. She had faced mortal danger and survived with Sebastian at her side, yet there was something else, something quieter, more dangerous. When she met his eyes in the dim candlelight of the manor's grand hall, she felt a pull she could not name. It was not fear nor power, it was desire. A slow, undeniable flame that ignited in the spaces between their shared glances, their accidental touches during training, and the whispered conversations that had become their secret language. Sebastian, too, felt it. Beneath his mask, beneath the cold, calculating exterior of the king, he was drawn to her fire, her courage, and the way she challenged him without fear. He observed her silently, careful not to break the rules of restraint he had long imposed upon himself. Yet, every laugh, every defiance, every act of bravery drew him closer, not as a ruler to a human, but as a man to a woman who had become indispensable in every sense. By the time Audrey retired to her chamber that night, her thoughts were tangled. Fear, exhilaration, and desire mingled in a way that left her breathless. She had come to Sebastian's world as prey, as a powerless pawn in a dangerous game. But now she was becoming a player, aware of her strength, her power, and her ability to influence events far beyond what she had ever imagined. And the bond between them, the slow-burning connection forged in shadows, danger, and whispered truths, was growing stronger, undeniable, and increasingly dangerous. The days following the winter solstice ball passed in a tense blur. Audrey had begun to understand the rhythm of Sebastian Blackwood's world. Power measured in whispered threats, influence traded with a glance, and danger lurking behind every gilded door. She trained daily, her body growing stronger, her mind sharper, and her connection to Sebastian deepening with each shared hour. Yet the real test was about to come. A sealed message arrived, carried by one of Sebastian's most trusted lieutenants. The wax bore the emblem of the rival vampire lord, Lord Kale. Patricia had not given up. She had allied herself with the most dangerous enemies of the Blackwood line, selling secrets and plotting revenge. Sebastian's storm-gray eyes darkened as he read the note aloud, the room freezing under the weight of his power. "They think they can corner me, Audrey," he said, voice low and lethal. "But they underestimate you. They always underestimate you." Audrey's chest tightened. Fear was present, but alongside it came something new, confidence. She had faced her stepmother's betrayal before. She had faced predators at the ball. And now, standing beside the most powerful vampire on the West Coast, she knew she could face almost anything. The next evening, Sebastian brought her to the manor's observation tower, a place where the city stretched beneath them, shimmering like a carpet of fireflies. "You have done well," he said, his hand brushing hers as he passed her a small dagger, ornate, blackened steel with intricate engravings. "But the world we live in demands more than courage. It demands understanding, strategy, and timing." Audrey nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility settle over her shoulders. She was no longer the timid stepdaughter. She was an agent of change in a world built on shadows. Their training shifted from physical to mental. Sebastian taught her how to read the intentions of others, how to anticipate danger, and how to use her unique abilities to influence events subtly yet decisively. Audrey discovered that the ancient words she had learned were not just protective. They could manipulate energy, influence minds, and even uncover hidden truths. Each revelation drew her closer to Sebastian. She noticed the way he watched her when he thought she wasn't looking, the subtle tension in his stance when she surprised him with her skill, and the way his voice softened, almost unconsciously, when he acknowledged her successes. One night, during a rare quiet moment, Audrey ventured into the manor's private garden. Moonlight bathed the hedges in silver, and the scent of night-blooming flowers filled the air. Sebastian appeared silently as if he had been there all along. "Do you ever fear yourself?" he asked, voice barely above a whisper. Audrey looked at him, surprised. "Fear myself?" she echoed. Sometimes. But I am learning. You've taught me that courage is not the absence of fear, but the choice to act despite it." He smiled faintly, a rare expression that softened his usually intense features. "Good," he murmured, moving closer. "Because the world will test you in ways that fear alone cannot prepare you for." Their eyes locked, and for a moment the storm outside faded, leaving only the heat between them. The slow burn of desire that had been simmering through training, danger, and shared secrets began to surface. Sebastian's hand, usually so precise and controlled, lingered on hers, a silent acknowledgement of trust, admiration, and something deeper, something neither of them could yet name. Audrey felt her pulse quicken, a mix of fear, excitement, and the growing awareness that she was not just surviving in his world, she was becoming part of it, part of him. But the peace was fleeting. Patricia, desperate and cunning, orchestrated another betrayal. She lured one of Sebastian's lieutenants into a trap, intending to steal the locket, the key to the sunken vault, and thereby control both Audrey and Sebastian. That night, Audrey sensed the disturbance before anyone else. Whispering the ancient words, she moved like a shadow through the corridors, intercepting the intruder with precision and calm she had never known she possessed. When Sebastian arrived, he found her standing over the subdued figure, eyes blazing with triumph and fire. "You've become formidable," he said, a mixture of awe and admiration in his voice. Later, in the safety of the manor, the adrenaline fading, Sebastian finally allowed himself a rare, unguarded moment. "Audrey," he whispered, his face inches from hers, "you are no longer the girl I brought here to protect. You are my equal, my partner, and more than I ever expected to find." Audrey felt her breath catch. The slow-burn connection between them had ignited, a spark threatening to become a flame. She realized that in surviving the darkness and claiming her power, she had also awakened something inside herself. A desire, a passion, and a bond that was as dangerous as it was irresistible. The Blackwood Manor was cloaked in an unnatural stillness that morning. Even the wind seemed to pause as if holding its breath, aware that something monumental was about to unfold. Audrey's heart raced as she clutched the silver locket, its intricate engravings glowing faintly in the dim light. Today she would confront the ultimate danger, the final betrayal by her stepmother Patricia and the rival Lord Kale, and claim the key to the sunken vault, the repository of vampire artifacts that could tip the balance of power in the Enclave forever. Sebastian Blackwood stood by her side, the mask discarded for the first time since the solstice ball. His storm-gray eyes were unreadable, a mixture of intensity, pride, and something softer, something that spoke directly to her heart. "This is it," he said, his voice low but steady. "Whatever happens today, remember, we survived together. You are stronger than they believe, Audrey. Stronger than you even know." Audrey felt a shiver run down her spine, not from fear, but from the knowledge that the man she had come to trust, and secretly desire, believed in her completely. The journey to the sunken vault was treacherous. Hidden deep beneath the ruins of a long-forgotten castle, the entrance lay beneath jagged cliffs and roaring waves. Every step was a test of courage, every shadow a potential threat. As they neared the vault, Audrey felt the power of the locket surge through her, responding to the energy of the artifacts hidden within. Her hands trembled, but this was no longer fear, it was awakening. She understood now that her abilities went far beyond protection. She could manipulate energy, sense hidden intentions, and unlock secrets that had been buried for centuries. Their approach did not go unnoticed. Patricia and Lord Kale ambushed them at the cliffside, dark figures emerging from the fog with malicious intent. "You think you can take what's mine?" Patricia hissed, her once polished exterior now twisted with desperation. Kale advanced, his fangs glinting, aura menacing. But Audrey did not flinch. Whispering the ancient words, she raised a protective barrier, sending energy crackling outward in a wave that pushed their enemies back. Sebastian moved with lethal grace beside her, his every strike precise, controlled, a display of predator power and unwavering strategy. Together they were unstoppable, a perfect balance of human ingenuity and vampire strength. The battle reached its peak within the vault chamber. Ancient artifacts shimmered in their resting places, the air thick with centuries of magic. Patricia lunged for the locket, but Audrey's newfound power surged fully. Light, pure and fierce, erupted from the silver chain, enveloping Patricia and rendering her powerless. Lord Kale's attack was halted mid-strike as Audrey's barrier pulsed around him, forcing him to retreat in shock. Sebastian's eyes, dark and stormy, met hers. "You did this," he breathed, awe in his voice. "You saved us." Audrey realized then that she had not only survived but had changed the course of events entirely. She had become more than a pawn, she was a force to be reckoned with. With Patricia and Kale defeated, Sebastian approached Audrey, his expression softening, the tension of centuries of power and battle dissolving into something more intimate, more human. "You are extraordinary," he whispered, brushing a strand of wet hair from her face. "Not just brave, not just strong, but something I never imagined finding in a human. You are mine in every way that matters." Audrey's chest tightened as the slow-burn connection between them, years in the making, finally ignited. She stepped closer, feeling the warmth of his presence, the undeniable pull of desire and love that had grown in the shadows of danger and betrayal. Finally they stood together in the vault chamber, the locket glowing softly between them. This is the future, Sebastian said, voice low, steady, reverent. A future where respect, trust, and courage matter more than power, wealth, or fear. You have proven that the smallest, most underestimated person can change everything. Audrey smiled, tears threatening to fall, and for the first time felt fully seen, not as a weak stepdaughter, not as a pawn, but as a woman worthy of love, respect, and a place by Sebastian's side. As they left the vault, the storm clearing to reveal a moonlit sky, Sebastian offered his hand. Audrey took it without hesitation. In that simple gesture, all the slow-building tension, danger, and unspoken desire finally found release. They were partners, equals, and lovers, bound not by fear or obligation, but by choice, courage, and a shared journey through darkness and light.